Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Expire Show where we feature technology innovators and entrepreneurs. Brought to you by the Science Centre Singapore, the Singapore Institute of Technology and Neo Aeronautics. We have been featuring quite a range of innovators and entrepreneurs from food technology to medical. We have also covered quite a bit of space with astronauts, and in this show tonight we're going to talk about materials, but what does materials used for, right? And we use a lot of materials, whether it's magnesium, but all kind of metals, but you will find that actually material science is a very interesting topic to work on, and we all always look at these materials and say, hey, what really can be a good applications. So tonight we're going to spend our time with Dr. Gururaj Parande, who is a material scientist, and let's move on to see Guru. Hi, Guru.
Hi, Prof.
Hi. Sit,
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. So, hi, this is, I will take time to pronounce your name, right?
Yeah, you can call me Guru.
Gururaj Parande, but I will call you Guru as
Yeah.
usual. And we're going to talk about your journey on your first innovation, how do you come up with topics, what's your research, what kind of requirements to do research, and then the transformation, of a researcher into an innovator first and an entrepreneur. So quite different in the journey.
Yeah.
All right, and also like to hear about what's your latest and how does Singapore support you, right?
Yep,
the government,
definitely.
how, or grants or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can start off with an introduction.
Sure. I have some slides to share as well, but first of all, thank you, Prof, for inviting me. So, so I am the co-founder and CTO of Magloy Tech, and before I start, I am an engineer by training. So I did my mechanical engineering back in India, then I worked for a couple of years in Robert Bosch while doing structural simulations. More on the material aspect as well, but focused on the design. Then I came here for my PhD at NUS, focusing on mechanical engineering towards materials. My PhD research was mainly around developing lightweight materials for various applications, and during my PhD I focused mostly on the medical applications, in specific the orthopedic applications, and that's what currently I'm trying to focus as part of my research fellowship in NUS, and that's how we started Magloy Tech. So Magloy Tech, we started with the intention of crafting bioresorbable magnesium alloys, which are, we call it new generation, because there has been research going on with the alloys, but there has been less of translation. So we are trying to attempt that.
Can you talk about what is bioresorbable first?
Okay, so bioresorbable is something which dissolves in your human body. So to give you an instant, everything you put in your human body, like the medicines, the food you eat, has a mechanism for it to come out of the body. Either it gets absorbed as nutrients, and whatever is an extra, it comes out. So bioresorbable is something which stays in the body for some time.
Yes.
And then once its job is done, it leaves the body. So magnesium has a very unique way to resorb in the body. Resorb, in colloquial terms, you can call it like degrade or dissolve in the body. So this is very important mechanism when it comes to some of the applications in the human body, not all, but some of the applications, which is what we are trying to address.
Sometimes people get a little bit worried, is it magnesium a piece of metal or whatever?
Yeah.
No, but actually in our body we have what we call the electrolytes, right?
Yes.
Which is magnesium, potassium, calcium, the balance, or the pH level.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yep. Let's move on.
So in the problem, what we try to address in Germany alone, every year there are around 4.5 million trauma fixation surgeries. I'll probably brief later what the trauma fixation means, which has an enormous cost of more than $1 billion for the healthcare ecosystem. So when we see such a problem, and if you consider the global numbers, the numbers are far more staggering. The reason there are many reasons associated to it, like the reason is maybe because of surgical issues, maybe the issue with respect to the mechanism of the body, but we are focusing purely on the material aspect of it. So what are the issues the materials cause, and the materials like stainless steel and titanium, which are also metallic materials, Prof, and they stay in the body forever. So they are non-bioresorbable materials, and they cause specific issues like site infections and loosening. But over the years, there have been polymer based implants which are non-metallic soft materials which have been used for these kind of applications, but they cannot be used in all parts of the body because inherently they are not very strong. So when you use it at very load bearing areas, you can have immediate and sudden failure which eventually goes back for a revision procedure. So we try to come somewhere in the middle where we are a metallic material but not as hard or as strong as stainless steel and titanium, but we are a resorbable material, but we don't resorb as slowly as polymers. So we want to try to thread the line where we try to take the best out of both the materials and try to solve the worst which is there in both the materials.
So you're saying that the stainless steels and titanium, which are used to also for implants, right?
Yeah.
Are very hard, right?
Yeah.
But they sort of always stay in your body.
True.
Right? And what we want is that it's like what I call bioscaffold, right? When they are fractured, you put something there. You don't want it to be there forever.
Yes.
But let the bone grow,
Over
and
it.
this something, whatever artificial things you put there, slowly disappear.
Yeah.
Or bioresorbable. Right?
Absolutely. Like there are reconstruction surgeries and there are replacement surgeries. So these are still the gold standard materials for replacement surgeries, where exactly as you mentioned, you need the material to be in the body forever for a hip replacement or a knee replacement surgeries. Like you need it to be at least for 20-30 years in the body and give you that protection. Okay. What we are trying to do is those fracture fixation, where you know that the bone is going to take some time to heal, and once that bone heals, you want that material not there in the body.
I heard that there's a material, what is called PCL.
PCL,
right?
Yeah. PCL, PLGA. These are mainly the polymer-based implants. So their resorption period or the dissolving period is like 3 to 5 years. So it's still quite long, and the bone would have healed by now. The bone usually takes. I have another slide explaining that, like, different parts of body have different dissolving or the healing times. So no part of the body takes 4 years to heal. It either heals in 4 months or 6 months, or you have to give up. It will never be healed.
Right.
So we want to try to match it according to that, so that we give the best possible solution for the patient. Okay. So that's what we're trying. So speaking of which, you see each part of the body has a different recovery time. So pelvis has 4 to 6 weeks, shoulder 6 weeks, and so on and so forth. Leg being one of the most load bearing element in the body, because it takes the body of your the weight of your body, it takes the maximum to heal, which is also 6 months. So anything after this, the body is physiologically not healing anymore, it is just supporting. So we want to try to match our products in with certain design considerations to mimic these timings.
I see.
So that we can therefore try to capture the trauma and fracture fixation market, which is a hugely growing market, around $10.7 billion, and specifically in Southeast Asian and Asian countries, it is a very booming market. So that's what we are trying to go in. So that's why we come up with Ortho Mag. So we were part of the NUS GRIP program, as Prof you would know, and that's where we try to translate this research into an implant where we want to provide a controlled degradation, very high strength retention, and it resorbs naturally. So when I say resorbs naturally, it's without surgical intervention. So once the material is there in the body, it keeps dissolving in time, but it is providing that amount of strength which is required to support the bone. The major issue in these kind of materials is what I mentioned here, is the stress shielding. So what happens is, you meet with an accident, you put an implant in your body, let's say the ankle. So if the bone is supported by a permanent implant like titanium, and when you put some load on that ankle, most of the load is taken by the implant and not the bone, because the bone and implant are very different from each other because of their physiology. So as we know that whenever you have a bone accident, you need to, after you recover, you need to train it to come back to its original strength. which is very unlikely when it comes to a permanent implant till the implant is removed. So, during the recovery phase, we try to keep the functional properties in Ortho Mag very close to that of a bone.
Yeah,
so, it is kind of a biomimicking material, and using that biomimicking material, we are able to match the recovery time and still maintain the safety in the body. And when I say safety, what we pride ourselves on is mainly the material, how we compose it. So, as I mentioned in my first slide, it's a bioresorbable magnesium alloy. So, alloys are basically not the pure metals. So, for example, stainless steel is an alloy of iron, right. So, they are not pure metals, so they are added with some elements like zinc, calcium, silicon, which are biocompatible as well.
I see.
And there is a requirement for the body of those metals, like you have magnesium supplements which are available in the market, which people take when they have a dearth of magnesium, and likewise for calcium. So, we use those kind of materials to build our material, so that even the body will not reject it once it starts dissolving in the body.
So, what I'm trying to understand is that you have this magnesium alloy, right?
Right.
And then it's supposed to support the stress. Let's say a fracture on the leg, right? So it's supposed to support the stress, and then bone will slowly grow and cover this, and the original material is just sort of reabsorbable, right? And then the bone will become follow that shape.
Yes.
And therefore the strength that you need for the leg, for if it's a fracture, is then transfer. So it's like, okay, 100% the implants, and then slowly 50% until the bones fully take over. Right? That's the process.
That's absolutely right, Prof. Like as I said, when we try to market ourselves as a magnesium alloy which transforms into bone, that's exactly what you described now, where we want 100% of the implant at the beginning and then 0% at the end. So we want that to be replaced by the bone.
Okay.
And this is physiologically easier with magnesium, and so we try with that, Prof.
Okay.
We are going with because we are material scientists, and we try to collaborate with medical device companies. We are excited to collaborate with Osteopore International, which is a 3D printing company based out of Singapore and listed in the Australian Stock Exchange. So the model what we are trying to explore with Osteopore is a very complementary based model, where the thing we are supplying to them is something which will go in complement with their own product. So if I can explain a bit more, so if you see there is an image of a skull and a maxilla here. So in the skull you see there are the osteomesh, which are the scaffolds which go on the skull and the maxilla, or at different parts of the body, and then we have plates and screws with how do I flash it? Anyway, so they have plates and screws at the bottom of the screen, which are going to be used for fixation. So the difference what we have when compared to other competitors is that we give material resorption and tissue regeneration at the same time. So osteomesh is also supported by other metallic based non-resorbable screws and plates at this point. So wherein the osteomesh can maybe dissolve in 1 or 2 years, but the screws and plates will be there for a long time. So
I thought many years back the founder of this Osteopore is Prof. Teo Swee Hin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I talked to Swee Hin many years back, and he was trying to show me this skull, the burr plug, where it's normally it's a titanium plate, right? So you need let's say they need to have a skull on a head or brain surgery, right? They're going to drill through the hole, and then put a titanium plate there. So there's burr plug, but he actually would this bioresorbable material. So it's interesting that actually you got to work with him.
It's really interesting, because osteomesh, or rather 3D printing, is also something which is one of a more futuristic technology, especially as a material scientist. It is something which is really taking up a field forward.
So this production wise is 3D printed.
The osteomesh is 3D printed
because it is conditioned to everybody's individual.
Absolutely. So this is the usual osteomesh, or the usual scaffolds are basically two types. The one which are elective, for elective procedures, where in case of a neurosurgery you have time to decide if you want to get, when are you going to get your surgery, for example. But in case of an interventional treatment where you meet with an accident and you have to do it immediately, it works for both because it's easily malleable, so it can fix any shape or form.
Okay.
So that's what we try to do with them. So we've been raising funds. We've been supported by NUS GRIP and the NUS ecosystem. We also raise fund externally and tapping on some Singapore government grants with Enterprise Singapore, the SSG POV grant, which is currently supporting our developmental activities. Also trying to learn. We are basically engineers by training and material scientists now. So trying to learn the hang of how to innovate, how to become an entrepreneur, and how to translate through the accelerator programs of GRIP, MedTech Innovator, and currently we are part of the Jumpstart because it's more focused to the medical device development domain. So we are really trying to understand the regulatory, the quality aspects of running a MedTech company, or even the clinical trial pathway. What is to be the clinical trial pathway? How many participants to recruit? Things like that. So that's what we are currently doing now. It's a recent update where we are trying to collaborate with SRS Life Sciences, also a Singaporean company with a lot of business in the South Asian, the Eastern European, and the Latin American region, with a focus on orthopedic fracture fixation. So our main intention is to go from the low risk to high risk. I mean, when I say low risk and we talk about the skull, like people will say, how can that be low risk? But the skull recovers faster, and the skull doesn't take any load because at the head, but the wrist and going forward it takes more load. So we are going from a non-load bearing domain to a load bearing domain, and we are excited about this partnership as well with SRS Life Sciences. So a bit of self promotion. So me and my co-founder were also listed this year in the Forbes 30 under 30, the Asia edition for the healthcare and science section. So it was a great acknowledgement for us, and it was a great validation for us to come out of research and try to get into entrepreneurship, and it was really nice to get this acknowledgement from Forbes.
So it's a great shot, in the studio nice shot of Forbes 30 under 30.
Yeah, we tried to replicate that kind of a photo. I hope.
Something like that. And
yeah,
you're not 30 years old yet?
No, I'm not.
Okay, see, wow, all right.
I'm getting there. So yeah, we securing some investment, the venture support agreement with NUS, which is really helping us fasten our product development, and with partnerships with medtech companies in the region, and with the support from the accelerator program, we trying to move forward and bring these products to the market.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all about us. So Vyasraj is the CEO of the company, and he works full time and does most of the hands-on work. I am the CTO. Prof. Manoj Gupta is actually the research is his brainchild. He's been working on this for more than 30 years, and Dr. Raymond Wong from NUH is our clinical partner. He's been of excellent support, especially because our first products are in oral and maxillofacial region. So his inputs have been really important for us to design as well as plan our clinical trials.
Okay.
Yep. So
all right.
So so we basically want to transform the orthopedic and craniomaxillofacial trauma fixation domain by eliminating the need for revision surgery with bioresorbable magnesium. That's what we plan to do. So yeah, thanks Prof. We can, if anyone wants to get in touch, please feel free to contact us.
Okay, very good. So I'm not going to ask you why you chose science to study your PhD in this area. I'm going to focus really on the transformation journey, right? From a researcher to an innovator and then an entrepreneur. Okay. So let's trace through the journey.
Right.
From a researcher to an innovator, right? Which means, what do you understand by being an innovator?
It's definitely a different ball game, and I realized it after falling a few times when I understand that research is a different ball game and innovation is a different ball game.
Right.
Though they seem to sound similar. Like you're researching something, it definitely has to be.
You're inventing something, right?
Yes. Yeah. But when you're innovating something, it has to have some value to the society. When you're researching something, it can be something which is really related to your field, where you're trying to answer some questions in the unanswered questions in the field. But in innovation, I think if it is making into something viable and trying to either through a product or a service or any new knowledge in that space, I think understanding that was a great challenge at the beginning, but very rewarding, because we realized when we were the GRIP program as well, that it's good to know our strengths, but we also need to know who are we talking to, who are our customers, and what are they looking at when they look at an innovation. So it's good to talk about research and figures and tables and charts and everything, but it may not make sense to who we are talking to. They probably are looking at the bottom line. What are we trying to innovate, and what are you trying to solve here, and how are you going to do it, and how are you going to make it viable?
All right.
Yeah.
So that's the difference when people talk about, or people are not very clear, right?
Yep.
Am I an inventor? Am I an innovator? So inventor, you invent, you come out with something new.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean whatever you come out has any use.
True.
Right? But the innovator will take whatever. You must have an invention first, right?
Yes.
Something new, and then you use it to, for certain application, mainly to help people, right? Create value so that people use. So there's a market over there, but an invention, not necessarily there must be a market.
True.
Okay, so that's the difference between invention and innovation. Now, invention results in intellectual properties.
Yep.
And I saw you have 5 patents, right?
Together, the whole group has 5 patents.
So your company has
1.
5 patents. Wow. Tell me, what makes you want to file patents?
Okay.
Is it because personal glory? You don't need a file patent to have a PhD, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, as a researcher, it's like when you file a patent or when you have to wait to file a patent, it's one of the most stressful journeys, because as a researcher, Prof, like you want to publish your work, you want to tell it to everyone. But when you want to file an IP, you have to protect it.
Okay.
So
on one hand, you are a researcher. You can't get a PhD. You got to tell everybody how great I am in my discovery. Yeah. And on the other hand, you got to protect your IP. Say, no, I'm going to commercialize.
True.
Right?
True. And also, it is very important to, especially in deep tech technologies, that if you are filing a patent, it gives you that extra validation when you go for fundraising, or also when you want to protect your technology. If your technology is going to be a very far-sighted technology in the next 10 to 15 years, I think protection becomes really important, and also opens up future opportunities for collaborations as well. If it can be another mode of revenue for you as well, if your patent is really unique. And IP protection is really important. We also had the chat about this during our GRIP as well, because we were initially planning to keep it a trade secret, but we realized that it will not create the same impact or the same value of what a patent would have. So that's why intellectual property is really key if you want to take something to the market.
Right. Yeah. Because it's actually very difficult to do a due diligence on a trade secret because it's secret. Yeah. Right. But if you have a patent, it's a document, right? True. You can read and people can do due diligence and see how valuable it is. Although your years of protection is limited to 20, right? Yeah. Right. So okay, good. So we talk about patents, ideas, invention being protected, and then comes to solution, right? So why do you choose this application in the medical? Medical is a very tough world to be in.
Yeah. So magnesium has a lot of applications in automotive and aerospace sectors. I mean, it has been used in a lot of helicopters, like defense applications for almost 30 to 40 years. And the reason why we went for the medical applications is, I could like maybe summarize into 2 points. One is that there is an immediate need for this kind of solution in the medical field, which there is a potential and a need as well. So we would like to target that need, because there's a huge market which we can serve, and try to make a difference in that market. That would be our main reason. In case of aerospace, because of the lack of many players, so in order to innovate something and make it commercializable, the journey is pretty long. and in automotive it's a very cost intensive industry. So medical device, it's if you are able to provide that value to the customer, and if it's a unique product helping the patient or helping the clinician, then you can stand a chance. That's one reason. One more would be a personal reason, like one of our co-founders, Vyas, is actually having a titanium implant in his ankle, and he's been enduring that for the last decade.
Oh, he's going to change. He's going to be our first customer.
Of course, of course. We have already told him that he is going to be our first clinical patient, but it's also a very personal, because I've known him for a long time and I've seen him how he has dealt with having an external body in your body. So and I know a lot of people don't like it as well, with the interviews we have done or in general. So with this we can try to eliminate that, which can help a lot of people like Vyas. So that it was also one of the reasons we went for it.
All right, that's great. So really, I think one of the things is really finding a problem to solve, right? Now, from a researcher with a PhD, right, and then you showed me the 3 circles of market, right?
Yep.
What are those?
SAM, SAM, TAM.
Sounds familiar, but can you explain? And I mean, you know, what's the feeling when you start doing all these things?
Yes, so it was really exciting for us, because it was like we were going into a small fish in a big pond of all these terminologies, new things which we are still very acquainted with. So the total market, what we are focusing on, is going to be the orthopedic market. Like that's the total market what anyone is going to target. So, and then you are going to have a sub market in that, wherein your product is going to be of high value. So that is what is the orthopedic fracture fixation market. And then there is something which is like an entry market or an accessible market, which you are going to go for first. So that is where we are going for CMF and small fracture fixation things. So the reason why I showed the circle is the value what we're trying to create in the orthopedic fracture fixation, which is valued at more than $10 to $15 billion. So it's quite immense. Like, and if we are able to expand with our ideas soon enough, we can try to address that market in the future. But the CMF is what we try to go in. So that's why we had those three bubbles. We tried to.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of people didn't really work on this day. They will say, okay, especially first time entrepreneur, they will say, okay, I got this big market, and if I got 1% of a $100 billion market, I'm at $1 billion, I'm unicorn. And I was like, okay, I just smile. For me, the first question that I ask is, how do you make your 1 million? And if you cannot answer the question, don't talk about the rest, right? So it's important to really segment it down, and then when you get smaller and smaller, up to a point where you can say, oh, who is my customers, how much money he has, what is his budget, when he's going to spend it, you know, that kind of things. It's a problem solving process, right? Rather than it's a market estimation process. So that's important to actually, I'm glad that actually you do that, Okay, so, all right, so that's the innovation. How do you know, I'm going to go a little bit technical here, right? So when you come out with this product, right? There is a specification. It must be somehow done this way, in this length, this weight, and you know, screw threads, how many. How do you actually come up with those stuff?
So because we're going for I can talk about my first product, which is the craniomaxillofacial surgeon, maxillofacial implants, where the samples or the implants we use are very miniature. So the ones which I showed there were 0.5 mm in thickness. And if you see that, it's a very simplistic design. It's just a square design with a few holes. And talking about the screw, actually screw is the part where the design changes have to be recurring, because A, you don't want to infringe on any existing designs, and B, you need to service what the plate, it's like a screw and plate portfolio. It goes hand in hand. So if you change one, then you change the other. So that design process took a lot of iterations, had to study a lot of existing designs, and how to make ourselves different and what is the difference we are trying to give. And the clinicians also had a lot of input in this, because you would know, Prof, when you screw the implant in, there are a lot of complications. The screw may break while it is in the bone, and then there might be an issue to screw the material in or screw the material, the implant out. So,
and the exertion of the force is
yes, the torque, and there are a lot of those things which come into play when you are trying to design the screw. Plate is the design is easier because it's just going to be there on the bone profile, but the screw is the one which actually goes inside the bone. So, those things had to be optimized, and because all the existing ecosystem in hospitals are with respect to titanium. So, will that work with us, and if not, how should we make it work? So, that was a challenge, and we tried to do that, so that if they want to be a customer, they do not have to change a lot of their
but that will be interesting, right?
Yep.
When in science, right, when two materials comes together and they are different, what will happen?
There will be corrosion as well.
Corrosion, they will impact each other.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So, that is why the plate and screw has to be from the same material.
Yes.
So, it can't be like, both have to be magnesium. And you might ask like, oh, you are using the osteo mesh, which is a different material, but it is not metallic, it is polymer. So, polymer does not react with magnesium.
Okay.
So, but let us say in that case, if we use titanium screws with magnesium, then magnesium is going to suffer.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, good. Let's move on to maybe from the innovator to the entrepreneur, right? What are the biggest challenges in that transformation journey?
I think the identifying the right customer would be the first biggest challenge, because when you innovate something, you have a product, a minimum viable product, what we say, and then that minimum viable product now has to reach the right customer. So, I can give you an example taking us our product as well. So, if you look at what the discussion we have had, it is giving a lot of value to patients, it is improving their lives and things. But the thing is, the patient is not actually picking these products, like they are not walking into a mall and actually picking this from the shelf. It has to be the decision of the clinician, and it has to be the decision of the hospital or the policymaker to use these kind of implants. So, initially our focus was very much towards the patient gets this, patient gets that, but the patient does not pay for it. So, either it is covered by the insurance in our target markets, either by insurance or the government itself, if it is a nationalized care.
Yeah, this brings us back to one very important concept in business, right? The customer and the user. Usually we think the user is the customer.
Right.
Of course, if you go and eat char kway teow, you are the user, you're the customer. But if you're designing a toy, then obviously the user is the kid, but the customer is the parent. And they have sometimes diverging requirements. Right. The parents, they cannot be too expensive. The kids don't care. Right. The parents say must have educational value. The kids just want to have fun. Right. So sometimes it's very diverging. But you still have to satisfy both parties, right?
True.
So in your environment, actually what the clinician or the doctor say so, it is so. The user don't care.
No, that's not what I meant. What I was trying to say is that the experience of the user is the user experience is will be felt automatically when they don't have to go to the hospital again. So, we don't have to, they will not realize that we are serving them until something goes wrong. So, they will only remember the implant if there is a problem, otherwise we will just do our job and we will move on. The clinicians and the hospital management, they want that these kind of things, like the whole ecosystem should not be altered so much, and it should be easy to use and things like that. So, that is where one point we had to shift bases a few times. One more was definitely to identify the market and actually identify what is the market, what has to be our launch market, and why should that be. And that was also really challenging, because the reports available on internet are very different, and sometimes they are may or may not be so credible as well. So, it is very tough to identify that, and most importantly is raising funds, because it's the cash flow needs to be on, Especially when you're developing something like what we are trying to develop, it requires immense cash flow before even we try to make $1 of profit, and the cash flow has to be sustained for years and years. So we need to plan much ahead and try to have a roadmap in mind, like how are we going to take this, when are we going to take this to market, and how much funding we need to require, how much manpower we need to require, what are the quality systems we need to establish. In case of medical devices, even though we will be working with our partners, we still have to have very high quality standards. These are some of the things which we had to get in touch with and try to understand how it is different. Like you have a product, but it has to be valuable. That is what we innovated, that we understood. But how do you make it, how do you sell it now and make profit out of it? That is the entrepreneurial journey. The creation of value is always there, but also you need to be thinking far ahead and planning everything in mind. It's really a task, but it's quite rewarding as well.
Okay, good. We'll have cover more questions on this later, on fundraising and you know, how running a startup. But let's look at the question first. It says, the first question asks, as a mechanical engineer, how are you assured that this material will work well within a biological standpoint? Oh, that's your PhD.
Sure. So that's what I worked on. Of course, I'm a mechanical engineer, but the work was done in collaboration with NUS Faculty of Dentistry, and I don't claim to be an expert at all in biological assessments of materials, but I have a decent enough sense on how we have to qualify these materials. So these materials were tested thoroughly by ISO standards in NUS dentistry. So the biocompatibility, the cytotoxicity, and how are they going to have a bone union, things like that was tested with regards to ISO standards.
So it was originally used for what, tooth implant?
No, so initially we wanted to go for maxilla, but we then pivoted to cranium applications, and then we reanalyzed those results from a cranium point of view at the beginning. But when we started it was with the oral and maxillofacial region, so that's where we qualified these materials from the biological standpoint.
I see. Yep. Okay. Anyway, if you work in the field, you know that there are actually quite a lot of materials that are biocompatible.
Sure.
And obviously people will continue to come up with new inject what else, to me is impurities, and to make to make better and new materials. Okay, let's move on to the second question. This is about clinical trial, right? What are the key learning points surrounding clinical trial pathways and about patents? And okay, it's quite two different topics, but let's say clinical trial pathway.
Sure. So it's very important to understand what type of clinical trial would you want to do, and before you do a clinical trial, you need to understand what agency would you want to approach after that. Do you want to go for HSA? Do you want to go for HSA is the Singapore authority, and then if you want to go for CE marking, or if you want to go for a US FDA. Everyone has their own clinical requirement, and there are different things we need to consider when designing the clinical trial. The key issue for us is that there is no predicate device available in the market, which is a bioresorbable cranium implant.
So what do you mean by predicate device?
So predicate device would be something which has been already registered in the medical device registry of
similar things that are on the market.
Yes. So if I'm going to use this implant in a certain region of the body, let's say in our case cranium. So if there is another material or an implant of similar material with similar intended use, then I can prove that I'm as good or better than that implant and get my registry.
Okay.
But in our case, there is no equivalence to be had. We cannot show that we are as good or better than anyone.
Must it be exactly equivalent?
As equivalent as possible. Okay. So because when we declare, when we write the dossier for dossier submission, when we include all the details, they will do an equivalence match to see how similar is the material, how similar is the processing method, how similar is the intended use, and how similar is the degradation, how long does it take to degrade in the body. If the agency feels that there is enough equivalence, then we can go ahead and do the trials. So, these things are important before designing your clinical trials. So, in your trials it has to be how many patients do you want to have it, what is the geographical location of the trial, would you want to have it in one country or multiple countries, would you want to have it in the age factors like young people, middle aged, old people, pediatrics. So, all these things are considered before designing the clinical trial pathway.
Yeah, I've worked on devices before and we call it substantially equivalent.
Substantially equivalent.
Not necessarily identical, but it performs a function.
True.
And the material doesn't change too much.
Yes.
You can have some new stuff, right? Okay, good. Let's spend a little bit more on the entrepreneur's journey, right? Do you believe there is some sort of pattern to becoming a successful entrepreneur?
I wouldn't say yes, because there have been so many stories about different types of people who have been who have had entrepreneurial instincts from the beginning, or they would have become, as I like to call it, an accidental entrepreneur, where they were doing something and then they suddenly found an idea and then they move ahead with that. So, I think the success would be definitely what I feel is how are you going to bridge the gap between your, let's say you're a researcher or anyone, maybe, like how are you going to translate it and make it a viable product which is providing value to the customer and hopefully profits to you. So, if all of them are yes, then you can take the plunge and go for it. And of course, it is a very difficult journey to go for. There is not so much security and all those things, but there is no set path. What I want to say is that if you listen to someone talking about entrepreneurship, do not use that as a model to replicate, and which may succeed or you may fail as well. So, find your own path and what you want to do in that journey.
Through your journey, you think you have attended so many trainings, right? Coming out, researching the market, come out in a market size, your launch, or sometimes people call beachhead market, coming out with MVP. You're familiar with TAM, SAM, SOM. Can entrepreneur be trained?
I would like to say yes, because I was not at all entrepreneurial to begin with. I was a very hardcore academician and wanted to get into academia, wanted to pursue that kind of lifestyle, loved my research, still do. But I think you need to get that mentorship. Like if you want to become an entrepreneur, let's say, you need to have that mentorship to identify how you would like to take that forward. I mean, we've had so many conversations about what should be our end selling product. Should we sell the devices, or should we sell the implants, or should we sell the materials? And these are the questions we always dabbled with, because we didn't know what was the right answer to it, and that's what we learned along the way. And mentorship was really keen for us, for someone who is absolutely no idea of how do you become. And of course, there are some blessed people who are born with entrepreneurial instincts, and they can also tap on that.
Okay. There's a question on clinical trial. How long and what probably what are the process to bring your current product to the market? They need to be certified and all this. So
So each type of product takes their own time, depends on the class of device. We are the highest class of device. We are class 3. So
you are class 3. Describe what is class 3.
So like the one which are invasive devices which go inside the body.
Goes inside the body is the highest risk.
So high risk devices. So the ones which are on your body are low risk, which their diagnostics are slightly higher risk, and these are staying inside your body for more than 72 hours, it becomes a high risk device. So the process from if I am assuming R&D to clinical trial is R&D is what we did during the PhD. So it took 4 to 5 years, and then establishing the startup, doing the animal trials first, and then doing the clinical trials. I think it's easily 8 to 10 years of R&D plus clinical trial both. So I think that would be a realistic timeline to work with, and it might be longer, but I don't think it can be any shorter.
I mean, there's regulatory, as medical things, there's a regulatory process, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually very difficult to accelerate this process.
Yeah.
It's not a life and death matter.
Yeah.
Right. So not an immediate life
Immediate
and
life
death
and
matter.
death.
So
Yeah.
it takes time for you to
Yeah.
prove yourself. Okay. So talk about one of the important thing is cash, right? And if you approach investor,
Yep.
and how do you approach and how do you negotiate with them?
We've had the chance to talk to a lot of investors, both locally and abroad. I think what I realize is that the investors look at the team, of course the technology and the product, but they also look at the team and how the team is going to bring this product to market. For example, I think that's their point of view of how they want to probably assess us. In case of us, we were probably looking at a more involved investor who are not only just pumping money into the startup, but are also going to give us some mentorship or some advice or some contacts in the target markets what we are trying to go, because they need, if they are as involved as they could be, we could really benefit from it. And they have lot of course we've spoken to so many investors, but we've been invested by one investor, and we've every investor had their own way of negotiating, and our negotiation was mainly based on the fact that how are they going to support us in those markets, and how are they going to help us bring this product to the market as fast as possible. That is what we went through eventually, when we wanted to raise the money.
So let me try to understand, right?
Yep.
So your first market, of course, your certification is in Singapore, right?
Yep.
After that, where are you going?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, because of the lack of predicate device, we are probably going to, we are starting with SEA, Southeast Asia and Australia, New Zealand. More so because it's a completely untapped market in this domain, with very little research happening as well. In some of the other countries in the West, there is research happening, but the commercialization is still not there. So that's of one reason, and more importantly, our current partners are also quite active in these regions, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and then subsequently we are going for the European markets, with the CE marking to begin with, and then 3-4 years down the line, once we have the CE market, if we are ready, then we probably go into the US market at that
so
point.
it's quite different. A lot of people would go to the US market first, right?
Yeah. There is a possibility to go to US, but we need to get the de novo classification. So de novo classification is, you don't need a predicate device. It's something like a CE marking, but only few technologies or few products apply for that. But we're still considering that option at this point, because we don't know if we still want to go to US at this point. So we first want to go to SEA and then subsequently Europe.
So there's an interesting question here, talking about how has Singapore ecosystems for innovation and entrepreneurship for startup has helped in your growth. What does the government do beyond not just the grants, right? But what other things that you have in the ecosystem that you are tapping into? Yeah.
So not only, as you mentioned, with the grants, I think the Singapore government also encourages a lot of entrepreneurial ideas through funding, and also through a lot of development programs and accelerator programs to begin with. And also there is in Singapore the ecosystem is very good in a way that everyone knows everyone. So you if you want to talk to someone, you will find someone who probably knows that person. And I think this is something created by the ecosystem and the ease of doing business. And Singapore is constantly ranked at #1 with the ease of doing business index. I think it clearly shows, because anything you need, if you want to go to ESG, Enterprise Singapore, which is the pioneering for the startup ecosystem in Singapore, and also the investors, the mentors, the accelerator programs, everything is very close knit, and you could get a foot in the door quite easily if you want to meet someone.
So can you talk about specifically what grants the government give you, and what are is there any conditions imposed on you, or?
So there are several grants which are at our disposal if you want to apply for it, depending on the where your startup is at this point. Have you finalized your product already, or have you want to enter a market, or even to the point where you want to establish trade with a certain country. So the grants go from the minimum product to as well as if you are a SME also. So the grants are in such a way that it provides good support both financially as well as in terms of headway into some of these competitions as well. And because they are considered to be a non-equity based grants, and you need to as a startup who need to keep the cash flow flowing, it's quite beneficial for us as well, because we don't lose a lot of equity. We can improve our valuation going forward, and not only the funding but the support also is really crucial for us from Enterprise Singapore specifically.
In any specific scheme?
Yeah, the startup, thanks Prof. The startup SG, the POV scheme, the proof of value scheme, by the time we applied, I think we were ready to try to bring this product to market. There is also a proof of concept scheme where you don't have a viable product yet, but you have a research which can probably, you need this funding to translate into some minimum viable product. So both of them are available for our disposal in Singapore to begin with, and of course there are other grants if you want to establish overseas, or if any overseas companies want to come in, there is EDB which will definitely support for their smooth pathway into Singapore.
Okay, let's move on to the manpower question.
Yep.
How do you identify good partners, and how do you find them?
Yep. So me and Vyas, we work in the same lab with Prof Gupta. So we kind of found each other while developing this technology together, and going forward we would definitely will diversify, because both of us are engineers by training. Our initial skill sets are matching, and but we have tried to learn along the way, especially Vyas to get more insight on how this entrepreneurial journey has to be. And going forward, we will be looking at more people who are in the quality and regulatory aspects, because medical device being a very stringent product with a lot of things going on. So going forward, we look at people who are helping us scale up this technology outside NUS, and help us with the quality system and the regulatory affairs. So I think in finding the partners, I think you need to have that kind of understanding, because as I mentioned earlier, the investors invest in you, not in the company, because they believe that you can do the company. So you need to believe that that person will be there with you in this bumpy road. Otherwise it becomes really tough to pull this through. So I think that would be something you need to look at when you're finding the partner for a startup.
There's one question, I probably will rephrase it.
Yep.
It basically asks why commercialize instead of joining a big corporation.
Yep.
No, one is of course about salary and stability, right?
Sure.
But maybe the question can be rephrased into what drives you to create your own startup versus joining a big corporation like maybe Medtronics or Johnson and so.
Yeah. So I think the key thing what I would like to say in this is that it's a very intangible feeling. Of course it may not reflect in your bank account, but the amount of it's the rewarding thing which will come if you are able to take this all the way through. I think that is unparalleled, and you have the I mean, nothing against the big corporations. I think they are doing a fantastic work as well in this domain. But like when we are doing our own startup work, we have a lot of ability to pivot when we want. We have the ability to develop the product what we want and go through with it. In big corporations, you may or may not be able to do that. So that is one of the major reasons why we would like to take it forward and try to commercialize it.
So you have an idea, you have a dream that you want to pursue. You can create something that you call your own, rather than join a big company. Yes, it's very good, but this is the task that you have to do.
Right.
Day in and day out. Okay, Great. So before we go, maybe what would be a 3 advice for people who want to go into deep tech entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think this is arguably the best period for deep tech to be in a deep tech ecosystem. Tomorrow will be even better. I would say yet the best period yet. So I think it's because the technologies are being scaled at a very rapid pace. There is so much data available at our disposal these days, and with internet going everywhere, I think for people who want to get into deep tech, there is huge opportunities. But there is also an advice that try to keep your mind open and try to assimilate everything you can from different streams, because the world is going very multidisciplinary, and you there used to be this jack of all trades, master of none, and so jack of all trades is also not wrong these days. Like if you know decent enough of something, you can be sought out, and deep tech gives you that opportunity because it is scalable and it can be commercialized to a huge extent at the global level, which may not be possible at with some other things. And good training, good mentorship is also very, very important.
So people who don't have deep tech knowledge or they are not in science, what should they do?
They could also find their own path, because I'm a bit biased when I say, like, when you have to find deep tech, it's going to be very fruitful, and by no means I mean that if you're not in deep tech, it's not. But
you can join a deep tech firm.
You could do that. You could do that, and also you could forge your own path. Like basically, every job you do or everything you do is quite valuable when you are contributing to the society. The amount of which you can contribute might have an upper ceiling, so you need to try to break that ceiling and try to go forward either by changing your pathway, because I started as a mechanical engineer. I worked in simulations. Now I do material science, which is engineering, but now I'm trying to commercialize a product. So it's been in this decade, it's been like 4 different changes, and I've been open to it till now, and let's see what future holds. So you need to be open to it. You need to try to explore, and if you're young, you can afford to make mistakes and try to learn from it. Not even if you're old, but if you're young, you have like lesser responsibilities on you, so you can try to explore, dabble around, and see what works for you.
One last interesting question. How many interns are you looking for?
We are looking mainly for 2 interns. One is in the quality assurance region, and one would be in the regulatory affairs. So because we are planning to scale up soon out of NUS in Singapore, so we would be looking at people who has expertise or interest in these kind of fields, so that we can explore together how we have to do.
How about people in marketing and business?
We would need that as well, but in the near future, our immediate focus would be on this, because we currently have a commercial partner, and I think those activities will be spearheaded by that partnership. So first we have to get our quality in place and get enough evidence for our regulatory submissions, and then we can focus on the commercialization aspects.
Okay, that's very good. Thanks for coming on board with us, and
thank you so
this much. Is Dr. Gururaj Parande. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Thank you.
Next week, we will have an interesting speaker, and from the CEO of SafeLight, and I know what it is. Well, if you are talking about COVID sterilization, and what you have is this light shining, you use UV light, and of course you cannot be in the place when the UV lights are shining. But these guys have come out with something that natural light, but can sterilize. All right, and that will be very interesting. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.